to the Insomnicat Show with Nicolette and Brian. We'll get real deep with you, educating, inspiring, and solving problems with some of the most inspirational humans on the planet. Buckle up and come on the journey.
I'm excited. All right, guys, I'm Nicolette, and today Brian and I are here with Andrea Lende. She is a speaker and author of the book Life After Lupus, with her autoimmune name. So she's here to talk to us a little bit about, the disease, many diseases, and overcoming them, and your journey. So we're excited to have her. Thank you so much for joining us, Andrea.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So why don't you kick us off by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, I'm a mom of 3 young men now. They're pretty well all grown up and in college, and have been writing books over the last number of years. I've authored 5 books now, and to speak about overcoming obstacles and turning those obstacles into successes. Truly, it's about mindset. So love talking about that. And have an online ministry called believinghim.com, where I share daily devotions and prayers and messages and things like that.
That's awesome. So, Andrea, tell us a little bit, and I'd love to talk a little bit about lupus itself, but at what point in your life were you diagnosed?
Sure. Well, it was a number of years back when I was 30 years old. I was diagnosed with lupus, and I had been a pilot flying airplanes. And so that disease pretty well took me down, and changed my life entirely, changed the course of the direction of how I would live my life out, and for the better. I know at the time flying was the coolest thing I'd ever done, and couldn't imagine doing anything else. But as life presents its opportunities to shift and redirect, that's exactly what I did.
So you were actively, flying, and now this must have been, so for those who aren't familiar with the disease, what are some of those side effects, and what were you experiencing, that kind of bring you to that point where you could no longer do what you were doing?
Yeah, great question. So the symptoms with lupus, one is a tremendous amount of fatigue, and that just goes with pretty much any autoimmune disorder. But for me, it started on back from Hawaii when I was having trouble breathing. And that was pretty scary because I was like in this enclosed tube and couldn't do anything. I just couldn't catch my breath. So that started my long journey. But lupus itself can attack, it's just a bunch of antibodies that attack the body in any way that it deems the way that it's going to go that day. So it can be different every day, but a lot of times there's joint issues, severe headaches, it can be difficult to walk, those kinds of things. But fatigue, and for me, breathing was huge. My intestinal tract was completely messed up. So it took a few years to get all of that back in sync and be well again.
Now, you mentioned you have multiple books. Are all of your books around like autoimmune disease and health?
They aren't. The first book that I wrote was the Life After Lupus. Definitely wanted to share my story, that journey to wellness, and then the rest of them are on a different path. One book is devotions, another book is daily prayers. Another book was just a lot of poems and prayers that I've written over my kids since they were born, and so I put those into one book so that really for them, it was a little Christmas present for them, so that they'd be able to leave a legacy for them to be able to look back and see the things that I'd written to them. And then this last book that I just songs that I have written over the years, written about 100 songs. And so I wanted those lyrics along with, there were a lot of stories that went with those songs. And so again, sort of a bit of a legacy, if you will, to leave behind.
So do you, I want to talk a little bit about the overcoming, right? So, I mean, as you shared, this affected you, especially breathing and the fatigue. And so traditionally, and I use that term loosely, but traditionally, do patients kind of succumb to that? And I mean, is there a treatment? What is the traditional method, and kind of where did you go with this that maybe was different from that?
Yeah, great question, because I did totally go another way in another direction. But traditionally, what people do is they get sick, typically end up in an ER, and then start this long process of seeing a whole bunch of doctors. They can't figure out what's happening. And ultimately, the blood test shows some sort of autoimmune is going to be occurring. So you're sent to a rheumatologist. And I didn't get that far. A rheumatologist is someone who would then prescribe meds, and a lot of lupus patients, autoimmune patients are on a number of different medications. My other symptom was I was allergic to everything that the doctors wanted to give me. So I always came out sicker leaving than when I went in. And so I soon found that that just wasn't going to be my path. And isn't that the way life goes? We get directed on the path we're supposed to go. So, and the people in the aviation community, many of them were telling me that I needed to seek out a naturopathic physician, which 20 some years ago wasn't really a thing. And, but I found myself in that very office because I couldn't do the meds that I had a whole cupboard full of meds that I couldn't take. So, and interestingly, that was the first doctor's visit that I felt like understood what was happening and was my first step in the healing process. He had identified right away that my breathing issues were due to my intestinal tract and not actual lung issues, if you will. So he started me fasting on liquids, and that fasting lasted 90 days for me. So I had no food at all for those 90 days, but it was, again, the first time that I felt relief. I had no idea my stomach was in such distress. And what that turned into was I couldn't expand my diaphragm to get a full breath. So I just could hardly get a breath. And that's where the breathing whole, that whole thing came in. Within 90 days, I did find a regular medical doctor who had a little apothecary in his office. So he could treat either by meds or by natural supplements. And that's what he did for me, was prescribed a whole bunch of supplements. And that set again, a new level of healing for my body. And just day by day, little by little, my body healed. It was truly a cell by cell thing. I know some people experience miraculous healings overnight. That wasn't my story, but day by day I did, the cells were regenerating. I listened to Deepak Chopra sometime later, who said that every 3 years, every cell in your body is regenerated. And so really that's what I did.
So a lot of people who have autoimmune diseases actually go on some sort of cleanse or fast, and they feel like it helps. What does that actually do to the body? I know you're not a doctor, but what did it do to your body that sort of helped out? Like you mentioned your intestines and things like that, but what else happened?
Well, it's interesting. All of the things that we consume in our bodies become a part of us in one way or the other, right? They enter our cell walls. And so when you detox and quit filling your body with those, whether it's sugar, caffeine, whatever it is, your body starts getting rid of it. Those cells will get rid of the toxins that are in your body. The catch-22 is first they enter your bloodstream, so you feel pretty crummy, maybe like you have the flu. But once that's out of your bloodstream and out of your body, then your body just starts recovering, and it's not having to fight off all these chemicals, toxins that we're consuming every day. And with that, there's another piece on the medical side of that. One of the things I had was leaky gut syndrome, and that's where the intestinal tract has become so acidic, like the flora in your gut, yes, the whole gut becomes so acidic that it starts eating little pinholes throughout your intestinal tract, which then imagine consuming a Big Mac, and now you've got that Big Mac from head to toe, right? So it's repairing that. And first of all, do no more damage.
Right.
Putting in lots of great probiotics and prebiotics to create the flora that you want to repair. That's the second thing. And that's why it took so long, because you're literally regenerating the whole intestinal wall at that point.
Do you think, some people believe like some of these autoimmune diseases are even caused by like diet and things like that, right? And do you see that being a big
100%.
part of it?
100%. For me, that was really key. When I did start eating food, it was just vegetables, like steamed vegetables and steamed zucchini. If it was green and you could I could eat it. And I remained a vegetarian for about 10 years. And so again, it's like that do no more harm thing. Like, what can you put in? Organic. I read every cancer book I could, because back then there was really nothing on lupus or autoimmune. I think most autoimmune sufferers were labeled hypochondriacs and not dealt in terms of like, how can we help you feel better? So I read all the things and did all the juicing that people did, and I did crazy stuff to get well. My whole focus was, how do I get well?
Mhm. Now, it seems like, and I don't make believe I'm an expert in any way on any type of autoimmune diseases, but it seems like so many of them have very similar symptoms, right? Like,
Yep.
you mentioned like joint swelling, things like that, like being able to walk, bloating, things. And it seems like they're very similar across the board, in terms of the symptoms on the person.
Absolutely. And that's really, if I could rename the disease, it would just be inflammation.
Right.
And when our bodies, and that's what happens, if we get a broken bone or anything, even a bruise, if you bump into something, what immediately happens is inflammation to further protect that wound, right? So in an autoimmune suffers, it's that inflammation almost head to toe sensation all the time. And your body's always in this fight or flight mechanism that we're born with that usually protects us. But the way to reduce that truly is, one, the diet, organic, and the commonality, the common thread between those of us who get well and experience wellness. I never hear someone getting well without doing, one, changing the diet. And I know right now it's really big, gluten-free, dairy-free, all free stuff. And that's really it. So what can a person eat? I follow a gentleman who's got MS and was diagnosed at 19. He's in his 40s, completely well, like the epitome of health. And his diet is lean meats, fruits, and vegetables.
Mm-hmm.
Mine is just the fruits, and I think he has some rice products as well. And that's mine, fruits, vegetables, rice. And that keeps the inflammation in the body. The other key component is reducing the chemicals that are around us. We don't realize, and I had absolutely no idea, you don't know until you know, that when the using just regular shampoo and toothpaste and dishwashing liquid is full of chemicals and pesticides and preservatives. Formaldehyde is a huge preservative, even in toothpaste. If you can imagine putting that in your mouth and then absorbing it, and your body has to do something with that. So it's eliminating those chemicals and toxins that are going to be absorbed into our system that we're going to breathe in or we're going to eat. Those are the key components. And when people can handle those, our bodies are amazing vehicles. They will heal. We expect them to heal when you get a cut on your hand.
Right.
Same thing happens internally. We can heal. Our bodies are meant to do that.
Well, our bodies, I mean, truly, like when you think about what we are, our bodies are not meant to absorb these processed foods, right? Or these preserved foods.
Right.
They're meant to absorb fresh things. Now, you also mentioned supplements, right? And now, how big of a part of the healing was the supplement aspect of?
Huge, like truly huge. It is, again, what we take in, and my body needed a lot of assistance. It needed that help to be able to repair cell by cell and have all those great things. So I was on tremendous doses of even just pure vitamin C in a powder with the water and other antioxidants. The other thing that was huge is our omega-3s. Omega-3s are a natural anti-inflammatory. So I took way above the recommended on that, and just to bring the inflammation down. And at one point I asked my doctor, because I didn't know, I was just take this, okay, fine. But at one point I asked him, even on omegas, what's this great for? And this may help someone in your audience. But he's at the time told me it was great for brain fog. Our proteins are made up of something like 2/3 oils. And that's the one thing that we don't supplement. We'll take protein powder and we'll all these things so that our bodies get what they need, but we don't think about feeding our brain. And we would have to eat something like 23 fish a week to be able to eat everything our brain needed. And then we die of mercury poisoning. So we can't do it. So it is so important to down those omega-3s and find a really great brand. Thankful that we can all have access if we look hard enough.
Mhm. You just mentioned, because my girlfriend always yells at me because I take like crap vitamins. Like I'll buy like the cheapest like,
Crap
gummy
vitamin.
vitamin and take it, right? And she's always like, you
Yeah.
got to take quality vitamins, and because she has some autoimmune issues also, and she basically
Ah,
takes these supplements, right? And she's always like, you shouldn't, but I'm like, I feel okay on them, but I don't have the same thing. So how important is the quality of the supplements you're actually putting into your system? Is it
well, you
it's just
just
like
asked.
food, right?
Yeah. You're asking such great questions because you're just giving me a lead in each one. Your girlfriend is spot on, and I'll tell you by example how that occurred for me, and then I'll flip it to how that can help you.
Mhm.
So fast forward 20 years, and I started feeling sick again in a different way. Had no idea that I'd be dealing with lupus a second time. And my husband finally said, "You really need to go in and get this checked out." This time, my breathing was so was always winded. I mean,
Mhm.
unloading the dishwasher, and I was having trouble breathing. So I did go in. The doctor thought I had a heart embolism, like a blood clot in my lung, and had already gone through my heart and into the lung. So he sent me to the ER, and he's like, "That was such a scary visit." He said, "Do you want me to call an ambulance for you?" And I'm thinking, yeah, I've been down this road before. So I drove myself to the ER, and a sweet guy, and when it was very quickly diagnosed as Graves' disease, which is another autoimmune thing, and it's where your autoimmune attacks your thyroid. Well, as soon as I learned what it was, so my heart rate, the reason why I was so um, my heart rate was at 120 just at rest, and if I do anything at 150 and is on the treadmill, it was 180. So I was just always on this eternal treadmill that I couldn't get out. At least my heart was. So I was
Right.
it all the time, right? So I go home and I check out what's Graves' disease. I learn all about it, and I call the endocrinologist and say, "Okay, all that blood I just gave, can you please run in a lupus panel on it, basically?" And she did. It came back as high as it was, and I expected it because lupus is a hormonal disorder. So I figured at the time when down the road when I was 30, I was thinking, okay, when I'm in my 50s, 60s, I may have another bout of this. So I it's funny. It's so amazing how our mind works, because as soon as I knew I was sick again, I was really sick. Like couldn't get out of bed. It's just amazing what our mind does. It just put me in bed immediately. I had every symptom of Graves' disease, every lupus symptom, and oh poor me, what am I going to do? I can't do this again type thing.
Mhm.
Well, I tried to mimic, so this is where the story comes in. I tried to mimic the same supplements, went to the local grocery store, purchased them, saw absolutely no improvement. Within a few days of this diagnosis, again, my niece, who was hooked up with a great company who made great vitamins, reached out and said, "Andrea, you really need to start shopping here. I've talked to so many people who've had illnesses, gotten well. I put her off, thought it was a deal. When I finally said yes, within 3 weeks, my symptoms were gone. Within 9 months, my blood test reversed." So, how important is it to get good supplements? It's that important. It means all the difference. The studies that you see now that come out saying that like a multivitamin does no good,
Mhm.
it's because you take the multivitamin. Now, it says it has antioxidants, it says it has all these minerals, but the problem is manufacturers don't know how to make the minerals absorbable. And minerals are a rock. So, what happens in your small intestine? They become a rock again, and now
Mhm.
vitamin C, E, and A, those antioxidants go to fight off the free radicals from the minerals that you just took that are now harming your body. So there's really no benefit to taking a multivitamin unless you take a really good one.
Yeah, I keep thinking those Flintstone vitamins for when I was like, 5 years old kick in at some point.
You know what? So mentioning not a brand name, but all those, like what I soon learned after, like I did so much research because I'm
Uh,
thinking, what on earth could be in the things I'm eating, doing, whatever that could bring on two full blown illnesses? And when I just get it right, I'm well. So in some of those kids' vitamins, they were actually putting formaldehyde in those to preserve them. I'm like, are you kidding? We're just like handing our kids cancer like candy. And
mhm.
it's just beyond me how this stuff can be approved. Anywho, don't even get me going on that. But yes, important.
But
Super important.
it's important to look if you're giving your kids vitamins. I mean, it's a
Right?
very, look at what's in there,
Careful.
right? at what's in there. Do your
Go
research.
with a go with a private manufacturing company every time. Seek it, you'll find it's there. You just have to look. And I'm happy to talk to anybody offline about that. So, anywho.
Just scared the crap out of me. My son's eating gummy bear vitamins like crazy. I'm like,
Yeah, so do I.
man.
I gotta now look at mine. I gotta look at mine. I've been eating gummy bear vitamins.
You've been eating Flintstone vitamins.
Well, when you were a kid, that's all you got.
I know, they were good though.
Right. And the thing is, I didn't know until I knew, and some of that information is like 10 years old. So it may have, they may have gotten better in the last, more people are knowing. The one thing I can tell you is that formaldehyde specifically comes in lots of different names. And so when I bought this, I went to the store and looked, I'm like, you've got to be kidding. Like, this can't be right. So I look, turn over the box, sure enough, it's there. So the name and the other thing is, labels don't tell you everything. Mm-hmm. In the 1950s, there was a law that came out that really protected, and I get it, like it served the purpose at the time. It protected proprietary rights. So like, say a company was developing a new formula for laundry detergent. Well, they didn't have to put what is exactly in there, because then someone else could make it cheaper, right? So, but now what that does is it doesn't protect us, because companies don't have to list everything that's in their products. Like, it's just not there.
Yeah, and leaving formaldehyde off of the label is probably good for business. So that's
right.
A little bit.
What's interesting? Back to my girlfriend and her theories on this. She's always like, anytime I'm buying anything, she's like, okay, whatever, I'm buying cranberry juice. She's like, look for the one that just has like cranberries and water and no other ingredients. Like the fewest ingredients, the better off you are. Mm-hmm. The fewest ones you actually know what it means, the better off you are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of like getting back to our roots. We want to just get the real stuff and not all the other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's funny because when my daughters come home from school, they always make lemonade, and they literally just take a lemon, they cut it open, they put it in water, they throw a little sugar in there, and that's it. Versus having like, powdered stuff, or do you know what I mean? Like some bottle
that's awesome.
Of lemonade. So.
Well, Andrea,
that's perfect. I haven't even heard another. Yeah.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say the other trick. One thing that I use with kiddos is club soda, and then putting in fruit or whatever with that, and that makes a nice pop. If the other stuff,
that's right. And what's interesting too is they actually enjoy making it, because I let them make it. So they, it's something they made, and they're proud that they made it, and it's healthy for them versus drinking, a soda, or do you know what I mean? Some other pre-made, juice.
So Andrea, what I really wanted to know, and you've mentioned you write a lot of prayers and whatnot. Was your faith, always there? And I know you come from a background, right? Both of you've come from pastors, right? But was your faith always there before this happened, or did you feel a heightened sense of belief in whatever anyone believes in? Did you feel a heightened sense of belief after you were sick, and during that time?
Absolutely. When a person is as sick as I was, there were a lot of nights I went to bed and I wasn't sure I'd wake up the next morning. And when you're that sick, there's this sort of special place that we get to reside in, where the spiritual realm is just a little bit closer, because you got one foot there anyway, and you don't know if the other foot's going to join pretty soon. But it was a really special time for me during that 3-year period that it took me those 3 years to get well. And another reason is because I wasn't doing anything other than, I had to go to work, but other than work, I had no social life, nothing. I was in bed by 4 p.m. And so there was a lot of downtime. And during that time, I read a lot, but it was a true reconnecting time also with God, because you can imagine flying. It's super competitive field, particularly back then for women. There weren't a lot of women there. So of course I wanted to be the best. And so it was always striving and working super hard. And I was working besides that in another field, but I was a flight instructor teaching people to fly. And it's just a doggy dog. It was rough,
Right.
rough. And so I didn't have a lot of time. I didn't make the time. Yes, my faith was still there, but as soon as my body quit, I had enough time, a lot of time to reconnect. And there were some super special experiences that happened, during those 1,000 days, I guess. And grateful for the redirection because it's where I needed to go in my life for sure, but I couldn't see it. I mean, flying was the coolest thing I'd ever done. So I was just going to keep doing that.
So then, what is your advice for someone who is suffering from some sort of disease, whether it be autoimmune? I mean, there are plenty of people who have very serious illnesses. What is your advice for kind of keeping the faith, if you will, and just believing in whatever, and the courage to keep going?
Absolutely. So, and each one of those is super important. So my message now, it really is to people who believe that autoimmune is a chronic forever illness, is to open up first the possibility that it isn't, that it is short term instead of chronic. Because most people think once they have that thing, they're going to have it forever. And I would encourage people, first of all, to think about the possibility of the body healing. And then I would also say, continue with that possibility. Read everything you can. Seek out people who are well. Find out what they did. It's a matter of, it's the whole seek and you shall find. If you work hard at anything, you'll find the answer that you need for yourself. And everybody's path is different, but there's a lot of commonalities between those of us who have been diagnosed with autoimmune who are now well. And so what are we doing? We're changing our diet. We're changing, and these things don't change overnight. Sometimes you feel worse before you feel better. I don't know how many healing crises I went through where that's where your body is throwing off those toxins. I just quit coffee a couple of weeks ago, and I just knew my stomach was starting to get acidic, and I'm like, this has to go. And I thought about it for a year, and I'm like, no, God, not today, just not today. The day came when it was the day, and it's really hard. It's give up the things that we really enjoy. Like that was my last vice, right? That was the last. And but we give these things up one at a time. Maybe it's dairy, maybe it's sugar, maybe whatever it is. But the other thing is that stick-to-itiveness, to stick through, even when you feel worse before you feel better. Because if you do logically what you know to do, you're going to feel worse first and then feel better. But it's keeping that faith, and whatever a person has to do that. You can be in the Bible, you can read other books people have read about getting well, stay connected on social media. This guy that I follow too, Matt Embry, phenomenal. And when I'm having a tough day, I click on Matt and I hear what he's got to say. And it's always push through. There are no cheat days. Keep moving, keep going forward. The smallest steps forward are still forward. They're still forward. And it's one step at a time. It's not, autoimmune isn't something you cure overnight. It's something that you make intentional steps doing and continue until you're at the other end of it.
Well, Andrea, we thank you so much for this hope and sharing your story with us. Can you let everybody know where they can find your book?
Yes, Amazon or barnesandnoble.com. You can find the Life After Lupus, What's Your Autoimmune Name, and I self-publish the rest of them, so all my other stuff is there as well on Amazon.
We'll put a link to that in the description. So great. Thank you again, Andrea. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely, my pleasure. And Brian, good luck in your wife as well. I hope she's well, and listen to her. She knows what she's talking about.
Yeah, I know. I gotta stop taking all those gummy vitamins.
Yeah, listen to her.
Find the good stuff.